Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Come and Play by Satu-Ryuu. They had a rubber man, a marimo, a thief, a liar, a love cook, and soon they would gain a reindeer, an archaeologist, a cyborg, and a skeleton. So a doll joining the crew shouldn't be so weird, right? Huge shout out to all the warlords of this channel. You know who you are. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios!
Marcy had been on the Mary for a total of 3 days and she was already beginning to rethink this decision to go with them. It wasn't the days of nothing but sailing on calm waters. She could handle the gnawing boredom that was apparently a normal occurrence when sailing on the open ocean. No, her troubles did not stem from her newfound life on a ship, but from the crew around her, from herself, from her lack of a place. Every being on the Mary had a designated role they played. Nami was a navigator, Zoro the first mate. Usopp was the sniper and repairman, inventor, Sanji the cook, and obviously Luffy was the captain. So what role could she play? As far as she could tell, there was no place in the crew for her. She had no idea in the slightest on how to sail a ship or really any knowledge of ships. Nami had forbidden Marcy from doing any type of running or jumping while on board the Mary because Marcy's weight coupled with the speed and force of those actions would shake the ship or cause it to rock. No one appreciated it. They all had thought the sea was getting rough. Marcy would have blushed if she could. The only thing that Marcy found was even moderately beneficial to the entire crew was the fact that she didn't sleep, so without hesitation she said she would take night watch duty every night unless she was too damaged to do so. There had been some argument, but after she stated that it was really the only way she could be of use while on the ship, everyone slowly accepted that they would be sleeping through every night unless certain circumstances said otherwise. That is what led to Marcy for the second night in a row now sitting in the crow's nest surrounded by darkness. There was not a single light burning on the deck of the ship, nor was there any sound. Marcy didn't need light to see. She could adjust her pupils to allow her to see in all variations of light and darkness. Though the vision in her left eye was ever so slightly distorted by the filled cracks, she could see a complete 360 degrees around her body and out onto the ocean. One of the few things she had managed to master in her lifetime. Marcy had spent many days pondering the extents of her heart's capabilities. There were dozens more than just bringing her to life. She could only use 3 other aspects to their fullest, and she knew of 10 other abilities. Sadly though, in the words of Usopp, all of her abilities were in fact creepy. Marcy sniffled at the thought. She didn't like being creepy. And she didn't like that Usopp included her when he referred to the monsters on this ship. Thinking about the others led Marcy to decide that if she wanted to be up to par with the rest of the crew, she would need to master her abilities at a faster pace and not her slow steady as she goes one. After all, looking back to when she met the crew, she was defeated so grotesquely while Luffy kicked that freak's ass in under an hour. Marcy opened her eyes, her vision refocused to the area in front of her. Her 360 degrees view gone. Her eyes scanned the area in a bored fashion before landing on the sail. They narrowed in disdain at what they locked onto. There were several places where the sail had been poorly mended. To Marcy it looked like a 5-year-old had tried to fix the areas, but she had grown up gazing at the stitches made by masters without compare. With a sigh, Marcy looped a rope around her waist and used it to position herself in front of the blindingly obvious mends. A single small blade dropped from her pointer finger and she slashed the stitches open with such precision that not a single ounce more of damage was caused to the sail. The blade slid back into her finger while the other hand reached behind her ear and freed a needle from its hidden place beneath satin flesh. From underneath the stitches on her wrist she pulled free the end of a thin, sturdy string and looped it through the needle. Marcy then began to redo the stitches with the precision and care of a master, though in her eyes it was purely mediocre. With that done, she moved to the next and repeated the process. This continued until the sail looked pristine again. Marcy nodded to herself before returning to her place in the crow's nest to wait out the rest of the night, not before she took a moment, more like an hour, to swing back and forth on her rope swing. As her legs kicked back and forth, pushing her higher into the air, she hummed along with her heart. a sad, but content tune that had no name of its own. Sanji was up several moments after the sun rose. He was always one of the first to rise, usually only beaten by Nami. He stopped on his way to the kitchen to bid Marcy a good morning. His eyes stopped for a moment on the now pristine sail. It hadn't been that way yesterday. He was positive there were several places where his beautiful Nami had sewn it shut. A smile lit his face again. At least his cute little doll hadn't been bored during the night. Marcy peeked over the side of the crow's nest and waved down at him with a bright smile. Sanji motioned for her to come down and join him. Without thinking, she jumped. Upon her landing, the front of the ship tipped deeper into the water while the back was lifted almost completely out of the water. Shouts and shrieks were preceded by thumps and thuds. Marcy cringed as the boat stopped its rocking. The hatch to the guy's room was thrown open and out rushed 3 bleary-eyed and bruised men. 2 ready for a fight and 1 slightly cowering behind them. Marcy gave them a sheepish grin, and they relaxed. "Marcy, you really need to be more careful." Usopp crossed his arms, looking less than pleased. "You need to stop throwing your weight around like that. If you'd be a little more light-footed, you wouldn't shake poor Mary every time you jump or run." Sorry, she smiled at him. "I got excited." "It's alright, but you act worse than Luffy sometimes." Marcy blinked at Usopp. "I mean, you're about 60 years old and yet you act like a child. I get that you don't age and all, but shouldn't you at least have gotten a bit more mature?" "I'm not 60. Marcy said with a pout, annoyed by his mistake. "I'm 101 years old now." "What? You're an old hag. Don't insult my daughter, you shitty Captain. She's old enough to be your great-grandmother, love cook. So stop calling her your daughter, it's weird. You're just jealous, Marimo, right? I'm jealous that God didn't place a century-year-old doll before me for me to raise as my daughter." "Stop saying that," Sanji wailed. "She can't be that old, my darling daughter is just confused after those years of living the same day." "I figured Marcy was at least in her 90s. Nami stated as she made her way to the group. She delivered a swift blow to the back of Marcy's head. Marcy just blinked. She didn't really feel the blow itself, but she understood it as her punishment for disobeying Nami. At the questioning looks, Nami explained. Gamma said she was older than him. The group accepted this with varying reactions. Luffy was amazed, again. Sanji was in denial, claiming that the 50-plus years of her reliving the same day only counted as one day, which still left Marcy at least 10 years older than him. Zoro didn't care. Nami didn't care. Usopp noted that her age would explain the way some of her joints and connective fabric was worn. With that done and over, everyone went to kitchen for coffee and breakfast. "You're very good at sewing, Marcy," Sanji said after placing the food on the table and serving the women. "Huh?" Marcy questioned around a mouthful of cranberry orange muffin. "You redid the repairs on the sail." Sanji munched on a piece of French toast. "I can barely tell the sail was ever damaged." "Oh, yeah." Marcy shoved another muffin into her mouth. "Father and Gamma taught me how to stitch. I'm not even remotely as good as them, but I'm okay. Father used to let me make the clothes for the dolls he made." Marcy devoured another muffin. All other conversations stopped and everyone turned slightly to listen. "So he a doll maker too?" "Nope. She made a popping sound with the page. He wanted me to be good enough to fix minor damage to my body without leaving nasty-looking lines of stitches. He said I had a better eye for clothes than the dolls themselves. I'm more of a seamstress, I guess." "Really?" Nami asked, a thoughtful look crossing her face. "Yeah?" Marcy was almost scared, as was everyone else. They all had an inkling of a feeling that Nami's next words would involve money somehow. After a moment of silence, Nami left only to return later with a pair of Usopp's brown coveralls. "Hey, those are mine, be quiet," Nami snapped at Usopp. "I needed something terrible to test her with." "Terrible?" Usopp grumbled, looking down at the one was wearing now. His coveralls weren't terrible. Kaya had once told him that they suited him and she wouldn't lie to him. He was the liar in that relationship. "I want to see how good of a seamstress you are." Nami threw the overalls at Marcy, who caught them with a questioning look. "Turn those into something I'd be willing to wear into public." Marcy's face went blank for a moment as she stared at the brown clothes clutched in her hands. In a moment, just like she had at night with the sail, A blade slipped from her pointer finger and she began to slash away at the overalls. Everyone watched with interest as she worked. Her hand was fast and precise, reducing the clothes to nothing more than a pile of fabric. The blade slid back into her finger and the needle was pulled from underneath satin flesh along with a line of thread. Faster than Marcy had cut it, she began to stitch the fabric back together again. The coveralls were no more. Instead it became a short ruffle skirt with an uneven hem. One of the straps of the coveralls had become a belt at the top of the somewhat low riding skirt. The next piece was a midriff single strap top. The other buckle strap of the coveralls had become the strap to the top, crossing from the left side of the top to sit slightly off the right shoulder of the wearer. A small short-sleeved crop jacket was made as well. Nami grinned, pleased with the outcome. All right, that settles it. Everyone will be getting 50% less money for buying clothes. Nami clapped happily, only to hear a chorus, "What's? She's a seamstress and a good one. That means she can fix your clothes after you get them damaged in a fight. You won't need to throw away clothes as often, which means you won't need as much money to buy them. And Marcy can always make you guys new ones if you really need her to." Nami was positively beaming as she sat back down to eat her breakfast. Plus she can fix the sails properly too. Marcy blinked, unsure. She wasn't positive, but it didn't sound normal for a pirate crew to have a seamstress. She looked at Luffy, questioning, who looked back at her before beaming a frighteningly happy grin. "All right. It's decided. You're our crew's seamstress." Marcy's sweat dropped, confused. A nervous laugh bubbling in her throat. "Do pirate crews really have seamstresses?" she questioned. "Sounds odd, but I don't think it's unheard of." Marcy looked at Zoro. He yawned then continued. "Pirates get in a lot of scraps, so we go through clothes pretty fast. Having someone around who can fix them wouldn't be such a bad thing. Besides, it'll help keep us out of debt with Nami since we won't need to ask that witch for money for new clothes." Nami growled at him while Sanji shouted. Marcy wandered off after that, settling herself back into the crow's nest. She grumbled, picking at her marble nails. Marcy was glad she had an official position on the crew, but couldn't it have been something more piratey? Her position was very conventional. It made sense to have a seamstress on board, especially from what she had seen in the past few days. And what she had seen was rather interesting. Luffy had managed to tear open the crotch of shorts, and instead of just simply putting them in the scrap material bin, she was rather surprised they even had one of those, though they technically had 4, but she wasn't counting. Anyways, Luffy had decided he would turn them into a fishing net. Long story short, it didn't work and he fell in, which caused Marcy to dive in to save him. Coincidentally, the whole crew also learned that Marcy does not swim or float. She sinks. She sinks faster than Luffy. Marcy smiled at the thoughts. Maybe she really was going to be a necessary member of the crew. With a new happy resolve, she wandered down to the rest of the crew. "You see an island?" Nami questioned. "This means that we are very close to the Grand Line now. This island is the location of Logetown, the city of the beginning and the end. The legendary Gold Roger was born and executed in this town, the place where the greatest pirate was executed." With that, everyone was excited in their own way. Marcy was bouncing on the balls of her feet. She had never been to another island before and she couldn't wait to explore. What made it even better was her first island was a famous one. "You're shaking the ship. Stop it." Marcy flinched back at the aggravated look on Nami's face. "We're humans supposed to make faces like that?" The second Marcy's feet touched land, she was off. She heard Nami and Usopp's shouts about not running off and blah blah blah. But she was bound to run into one of them at some point while she was exploring, and if not, she would just return to the ship when she was done. She also heard Sanji shout something about staying with Papa so he could protect her, but she decided to ignore that one entirely. She sprinted around in a giddy haze, stopping from time to time in order to look at different things. The first store she actually went into with the intent to buy things was a fabric store. If she was going to be the crew's seamstress, she might as well set up shop on the ship now, which means she'd be needing a lot of supplies. That and Marcy liked to sew her own clothes. Marcy smiled a small secretive smile as she patted the pocket of her jacket that held her money pouch. Before she had left with everyone, she had cleared the old workshop out. Everything that meant too much to her to be sold was left to the town, who pledged to take good care of it. She took all of the money her father had left behind, several $100,000, before she gathered the dolls and other things of value to be sold. In the end she had a total of 21 million berries. Not counting the 5 pouches of gems she brought with her to use to power her heart. Nami had cried when she was told what the gems were for, and if she knew about the money that Marcy had brought with her, Nami would have more than likely demanded Marcy pay in compensation for Nami allowing so many precious gems to be destroyed. After Marcy was positive she had bought plenty of supplies, all of the highest quality, no way would she reduce herself to cheaper materials just because she was a pirate, and damn it. She was not about to let herself be seen on a crew that looked like paupers. Yes, Marcy had a shallow side that came into play when clothes were involved. She dumped them on the ship before rushing back into the town. No point in her lugging around those supplies all day. Marcy was debating whether she should buy supplies for fixing her body or not. It was possible that Usopp was already doing that since he had claimed the job of fixing her, but she couldn't count on that since it was her body after all. A part of her said that it was expected of him to have those things handy, but the majority claimed that it would be rude and selfish of her to demand that of him, especially with the amount of money Nami gives them and Marcy's refusal to have low-quality materials in or on her body. A glance into the window of a shop had a boiling hatred disintegrating all other thoughts from her mind. Never before had something so simple and lifeless evoked such a reaction from the doll. Her eyes never left the source of her hatred. Even as she moved into the store, her eyes burned into the shelves and objects that hide it from her sight. It wasn't her imagination. Once Marcy was close enough to it, she grasped it in her hands with a gentleness that gave no inkling to burning desire to set free the blades hidden in each finger and rip into it with the fury of a hellcat. "You've got a good eye. That's a..." Marcy cut the old woman whom she assumed was the owner of the store off with such a cold voice that she herself was surprised. A Ryuden original. The last and the greatest of his dolls. Publicly known as the parting gift, it was started with the intent to be a gift to his daughter on her 6th birthday, but she died before it was finished along with his wife. It then became a parting gift. Her fingers caressed the face of the doll in admiration. A faint tingle echoed from the doll's face and into Marcy's own fingers. It was stronger than the last time Marcy had felt it. A dancing hum, that was so sad and lonely, pained that it caused a sharp near-crippling pain to rip through Marcy. Marcy's own humming heart sputtered for a moment. "You know quite a bit." The woman smiled a small, almost dark smile, though Marcy didn't notice. "A fan of his work, maybe?" Marcy grunted in response. "It's eerie, how similar you and the doll are." In honesty, Marcy loved all of her father's dolls, except this one. She hated this one. The doll was beautiful with straight hair of the deepest black silk, the finest satin skin, and pastel green eyes. Marcy reached onto its back and pulled the small switch. A gentle humming music filled the air as the doll's internal mechanics came to life. It was the same faint hum that Marcy felt, only amplified and turned to music. Its chest split down the middle as hinges pulled it open, exposing a mechanical heart. Black lines shifted in patterns on the doll's insides while the small metal heart opened to reveal itself as a tiny music box. Inside the music box heart a small phrase was carved in perfect black script. "I will never say goodbye to my family. I love you, Mary and Lacey." Marcy sneered at the doll for a moment. She didn't know why her father had refused to bury this doll with his human daughter. Why he kept it around him at all times. This single object represented so much pain and torment for him. So why was this kept closer to him than Marcy was? Why had he taken this stupid doll with him on his voyage instead of Marcy? She pulled the switch again, tired of seeing this stupid thing pretending to be alive. This was the model used to make Marcy herself, and she hated it. She hated it because all it represented was the pain and sorrow that had driven her father to make her. As Marcy went to place the doll back in its place, still debating on destroying the thing, a thick black tendril of string caught her finger. She glared violently at it, giving a hard tug to free her finger. The old shopwoman flinched violently and made a pained sound, as a withered hand clasped over the center of her chest. Such brutal treatment towards a doll. The old woman pulled it from Marcy's grasp and held it like a precious treasure. "Though to you it isn't just a doll, is it?" Marcy's violent glare moved to the woman herself. "Yes, you're cut from the exact same materials this beauty was." That makes this doll your older sister, yes? Marcy took a step back, her fingers moving to a position that would make freeing the spiked blades in her arms easier. What makes you say that? The woman gave the same dark smile. Because you're a doll, just like this one, made by the same man, with the same materials, though you are obviously better. You were made with Ryuden pouring his hopes and dreams and love into you. That's always better than pain and anger and misery. How do you know that? It was more than a question. It was a demand, a plea, a threat. I met your father, Ryuden, once, a long time ago. Marcy lowered her stance, still rather cautious, but not about to attack the woman. That and you have the mark Ryuden put on all of his dolls. No, I don't. This woman was deranged. That's what Marcy decided. There was no way an old hag could have known she was a doll, especially not Ryuden's. And there was no way in hell she could have seen Ryuden's symbol. Laughter bubbled from the woman. Such a silly doll. You're parading yourself around as a human, trying to be something you can never be. Isn't it enough that you're alive? I'm not alive though. I'm just a doll that can walk and talk. Marcy looked down at her satin hands. She had fabric, not flesh. Stone instead of bone. Not alive, The woman gave her a dark look. All things that continuously have strong emotions poured into them or towards them are in a sense alive. Those emotions take root and birth a new life. It is faint and incapable of doing much, but it's there and in certain instances may gain enough strength to act on its own. What are you talking about? Marcy deadpanned. She may be a walking talking doll, but that did not mean she thought inanimate objects could be alive. A rather hypocritical viewpoint. It's commonly seen from ships that are very well taken care of. It can happen to any object that is precious to someone, though. So, you're trying to tell me that I was alive before I got the heart? The woman nodded. If that's all true, then that thing you're holding is alive too? That thing? No, I'm afraid that's a bit of a different story, but without the heart you are still alive. You can hear and sense what's going on. You're aware of everything, just not capable of doing anything. You can feel, see, alive. You're stupid. Marcy said with finality. That's not living, not being alive. That's just being aware. What's the difference? A lot, and if you can't see that, then you've gone senile in your old age. The woman's face went blank. And you're far too greedy and ignorant for your own good, Dolly. Marcy took a step back, startled. The hell would you know? She demanded. Because I met an arrogant fool, who's just as greedy and ignorant as you. The only difference is, the woman placed a finger pointing directly at Marcy's heart. Your heart is beautiful. What the hell, eh? Your friends are leaving now. There's some nasty trouble brewing. You better hurry, Dolly. With a lot of hesitation, Marcy rushed out the door and towards the docks. The old woman looked at the doll and grinned something nasty, before making her way into furthest part of the storage of her store. She finally shows up. I'm not sure how I feel about her. My little sister. After so many decades of not seeing her, I find myself with a warm feeling. She's still so very jealous and hurt by me. And she could feel it, she was the only one who could ever feel it. I would have thought that after all these years she wouldn't be able to feel the life humming through my body. But she could. My precious sister. Do I want to help her or should I shatter her like she wants to do to me? The woman opens a large crate with one hand. The doll held securely in the other. What do you think, girlie? Inside the crate was a young girl, barely 13. Her face was streaked with tears and she was shivering. The girl had bright acidic green-colored hair. Her eyes were a purple that was reminiscent of poison, and her skin had a sickly yellow tinge to it. This was not the appearance the child had been born with. The old woman smirked as she remembered force feeding the young girl a devil fruit several days ago and watching her features shift. No comment? Well, it's not like your opinion matters anyway. With one hand the old woman lifted the girl from the crate and dropped her to the floor. Steel body snatcher. Twisting black threads burst from the doll and coiled around the now screaming child. She writhed and wriggled, trying to get away from the threads that had now begun to burrow into her flesh. This went on for several moments before all the threads pulled themselves fully into the girl's body. Only one thread was left connecting from the girl's chest to the doll's back. After moments of silence, the girl stood. A grin on her face that was pure pulled the doll from the old woman's grasp, as a string disconnected from the woman's chest with a slick snapping sound and retracted into the doll's body. It took the woman a moment before she began screaming and shaking. The girl only grinned as she raised a single hand. A large cloud of purple gas erupted from the pores in her flesh and filled the room. The old woman choked and sobbed, falling to her knees. "Why?" she screamed. 30 years you've kept me. Why, you monster, you made me do horrible things and now you're going to put that poor child through the same agony." The girl grinned. "I needed your body," she said as if it were obvious. "Besides, you were the cutest and the strongest that was available. Trust me, I would have dropped you sooner had I found a better body. Anyway, I didn't make you do anything. I did it. I just used your body. Nothing personal." The girl turned and began to walk out of the store as the woman's skin turned a sickly color and blood filled her lungs. The girl didn't even glance back, she just kept walking. "I've got the power of 2 devil fruits now, why didn't I think of this before? Old age must be getting to me." She cackled, causing the people who heard her to stare in confusion, wondering how the little girl with acid green hair and sickly yellow skin clutching a beautiful doll could be any form of old. "I wonder, should I chase after my darling baby sister, or should I simply go my own way and see if fate brings these 2 long-lost sisters together again?" The girl snapped around and began a happy, almost skipping pace in the direction of the docks. "I can at least head in the same direction as her. Who knows, maybe she'll bring that monster out of hiding for me. His paranoia won't be enough to keep him from making moves now that his prize is out and about." Marcy stared at Logue Town through the storm. Something dark and foreboding had wormed its way into her stomach. She turned to the talking crew. As rain soaked its way through her satin flesh, it would take her hours to dry. "Shall we begin the ceremony for entering the ocean?" Sanji placed a barrel on the deck and then placed his foot on it. "I want to find the all blue." Luffy followed his example. To be king of the pirates, Zoro was next. To be the greatest swordsman, Nami followed. To draw a world map, Usopp was shivering and stuttering, but he joined too. To become a brave warrior of the sea, they all looked at Marcy, who stood there thinking for a moment. What truly was her dream? She placed her foot on the barrel. To live a life with no regrets, that's what Marcy decided on. She wouldn't regret getting the stone and being human, and she wouldn't regret making her father proud, and she wouldn't regret helping her friends achieve their dreams. They all raised their feet and slammed them down, crushing the barrel and spilling its contents across the deck. Marcy's foot went through the deck of the ship as well. "What the hell did you do that for?" Usopp shrieked. "I didn't mean to." Marcy began tugging on her foot. "Gah, I'm stuck." "I'll help." Luffy grasped her shin and with a mighty tug, her foot was free, though the planks suffered more damage in the process. "We haven't even gotten to the Grandline yet and you 2 idiots are already putting holes in the ship." Nami did the scary angry face again before punching Marcy and Luffy. For the time being, Marcy decided to ignore what had happened in Logue Town. It was merely just a freak coincidence that the single thing she hated most in this world was in that shop. If she could blush, she would have. Thinking back on the rage and jealousy she felt towards something so simple as a doll. Though if you thought about it logically, then it wouldn't be so different from a human girl being jealous of another human girl. Or a very severe, very violent case of sibling rivalry. Marcy knew she had terrible control of her own emotions, especially the negative ones. It could be taken as her having a short temper, but in honesty she had no temper at all really. Certain things for no reason would set her off into a near-lethal rage and she was calm again just as quickly. Marcy flopped down at a seat around the table. The ship shuddered ever so slightly. She grinned nervously and laughed when Nami glared and growled at her. It must be all the changes in her life that were making it hard for her to maintain her feelings. Her personality, she noted dully, had been fluctuating too. She found herself behaving very much like Luffy one moment and then taking on a more Zoro-like facade. She chalked it up to the mysteries surrounding her heart. It scared her. To think that her whole being was so dependent on a rusted mystical old trinket. In the back of her mind, Marcy asks herself the single question she had wondered her whole life. Is this my personality or is it all someone else? Other things had had this heart before her. Is the personality she developed of her own design or is it just left over from the heart's previous owners? It seems that the entrance the Grand Line is a mountain. To Marcy it sounded completely normal, why wouldn't it? She was a living doll that was a pirate with a rubber man for a captain. See? Normal. After various facial expressions and Usopp's frightened shout and his creepy, exceptionally painful-looking tilting of his head that reminded Marcy of something she saw in a book about possessed people, Nami continued. Yes, at first, I thought that it's impossible, but look at this. The place where the guiding light is pointing is Loose Mountain on the red line. Nami showed them all the map. Everyone in the room understood what was on it. Everyone, but Marcy, that is. Marcy saw only a picture with some markings and a few other things that made no sense to her, while others saw a paper with valuable information on it. She stared intently, eyes narrowed while she made a small humming noise in the back of her throat. Maybe if she stared hard enough at the map, she would start to understand it. Use a ship to cross a mountain. Sounds interesting. Marcy looked away from the map, which she had been staring a hole in, and to Luffy. He looked at her and grinned. She scrunched her nose up and stuck out her tongue. Doesn't sound too bad. That sentence was perfect for jinxing them. I want to ask you something. Marcy took to staring at the map again, while Zoro began speaking. She pondered how someone could manage to draw something like this accurately. She'd have to stalk Nami when she did her measuring thing of the island. What is the reason of going to the Grand Line by using an entrance? If you head south, you can go to the Grand Line too, right? Marcy flinched when Luffy shouted. That's a bad idea, Zoro. Marcy had enough of the current conversation. It involved maps and directions and seas and sailing. All of the things Marcy had no clue about. She stood and headed for the door. The weather had cleared and the sun was out now. Marcy was grateful for that. She was still soaked through and burning rays of sunshine would speed up her drying time. If Marcy's satin skin stayed wet for too long, it would begin to mildew, and there was no chance in hell that she would allow her lovely skin to suffer such a thing. And so, the second Marcy reached an open, slightly less wet portion of the deck, she stripped down to her underwear, a bright orange bra with matching boy-cut panties, and careful laid on her back in the rays of sun. Marcy proceeded to twist her body so that her left knee touched the deck on her right side while her right elbow touched the deck on her left side. She did this repeatedly, switching sides each time and making a small sound effects. With each twist a small amount of water gushed through her satin skin. Soon everyone was out on the deck admiring the weather. No one noticed Marcy yet though. We're in deep trouble now. This must be the calm belt, Nami said, looking moderately panicked. Calm belt? What is it? Ah, look, there's still a storm over there, but this side is so calm and doesn't have any wind. Usopp's gaze was torn away from the distant storm by motion in the corner of his eye. His face fell when he saw Marcy behaving like a fish out of water. Marcy, what are you doing? She paused briefly to shoot him a carefree smile. I'm wringing out my torso so that I can dry faster so I won't mildew. That'd be nasty. Ah, okay. Did you have to take off your clothes too? Marcy nodded. Sanji chose that moment to look over at her. His jaw dropped. No, my precious daughter. Sanji attempted to cover her with his jacket, but she held him at bay with a cold satin foot. Shield your innocent body from these beasts. I like being naked. With that shout, Marcy leapt to her feet, effectively rocking the boat, and running defiantly from Sanji. Each thundering step making poor Mary shudder and quake. I refuse to reclothe myself, no matter what Papa Sanji says. Just shut up and prepare to row. We will go back to the storm, Nami shouted before rounding on the still running Marcy. And damn it, Marcy. You can wear however little you want. Just stop running. Marcy stopped running. Nami's faces were really terrifying. Why do we have to hurry? You told us to row the ship, but this is not a rowboat. Luffy said, confused. Marcy peeked over the railing. Her eyes went wide with wonder. Her only coherent thought was big fishies. Why do we have to go back to the storm? Marcy barely heard Usopp. Just shut and do it. The weather's nice here. Why do we have to go back there? Zoro glanced briefly at Marcy, who had her upper body hanging over the railing. Her bright orange panty-clad bottom was up in the air while her feet kicked wildly and her small satin hands made weird grasping motions at the water below. Zoro promptly ignored the doll. I am going to explain it to you. Angry Nami is a scary Nami. Now the ship is heading south like you wanted. Barely audible thanks to Nami's raised voice was the happy chanting of, giant fishy, giant fishy, giant fishy. coming from the doll hanging over the railing. She grinned and giggled happily. Marcy wasn't aware that fish could get that big. "Oh, so we're in the Grand Line now?" Zoro looked around slightly surprised, avidly avoiding looking in the direction of the doll, who was now wiggling her hips around in the air. She wouldn't learn anything if he went over there and kept her from falling overboard. Might as well let her do it now, so she'll be more careful later. If it's that easy to enter, then there would be more people coming here. Marcy blinked, having been startled out of her observation of the giant fish by Nami's shout. She looked up and into the raging storm. Her pastel eyes focused on a single point in the distance. She couldn't see it, but she knew it was there. Marcy didn't even know what it was, but it was there, and that's all that mattered to her. It was there and it was waiting. She could only assume it was waiting for them. Marcy moved to stand up and tell everyone, but the ship began to shake. Marcy lost her balance and began to fall fully over the railing. A large splash followed her descent. "Ah, an earthquake, don't be stupid, we're in the middle of the ocean." "Oh, then is Marcy running around again?" "No, she just fell overboard." Everyone rounded on Zoro. "You saw her fall and didn't do anything?" Nami shrieked. "You bastard." Sanji rushed to the railing that Marcy went over. "PRR her. Once I get my precious daughter out, I'm gonna kick your ass, shitty swordsman." And then the ship was suddenly lifted miles into the air. Everyone froze. Sanji had one foot on the railing, eyes wide and blinking. Everyone's response was unintelligible. A collective, "oh shit," passed through their minds. "This sea is a giant sea king's nest." Nami sobbed into the mast. More unintelligible noises were made. "Hey, guys, where's Marcy?" Luffy asked, looking around. Zoro already said she fell into the ocean. Nami sobbed more. "The sea kings probably swallowed her." "Never mind. I found her." Luffy pointed to a place a good distance from them. There was a small dot clinging to the sea king's fin. Loud noises of panic were echoing from the dot. "When this monster dives, let's begin rowing as fast as we can. Get it?" Sanji and Luffy shouted a response in affirmative. "Luffy, quick, grab Marcy." "Right." Luffy cocked his right arm back. Gum grab. His hand shot out towards the shrieking dot and grabbed hold of the first thing he could. His fist curled tightly in soaking wet silk hair before snapping back. Marcy shrieked like a banshee and flailed her arms. The Sea King sneezed at that same moment. While everyone else was tossed around on the ship, Marcy was whipped around in the air behind the now flying ship. Tears flowed freely down her face. She had resigned herself to this fate. The only good thing that was good coming from this was all the water that had soaked into her body was being forced out. Soon she was slammed into Sanji, who went down with a wheeze, so that Luffy could save the unconscious Usopp. Marcy lay twitching in Sanji's grasp, her hair sticking up from where Luffy had been holding her by it. Vaguely she wondered if her marble bones had fallen out during her little flying trip. She felt like jelly, and not the good kind. Sanji sobbed into her, swearing vengeance against that shitty captain and that shitty Marimo. When the ship was safe back in the storm and everyone was strewn around the deck, Marcy dragged herself to the railing and wheezed. Her eyes focused on what she assumed to be a ship, though she couldn't be positive. It was blurred and distorted by the rain. On that blurred ship in the distance stood a man with the word, metal, tattooed into the flesh side of his face. He looked battered and beaten. His metal was bent and his flesh was bruised. "She's on that ship," he snarled to a crew of what appeared to be metal statues. They moved in unison, preparing the ship to sail for the other much smaller vessel. He was going to make those brats pay for what they did. Not only did that snot-nosed straw hat beat the shit out of him, but he made him fail his mission. He was a disgrace. A pathetic excuse of a servant to his master, beaten so easily by some useless newbie pirate with pathetic dreams. This time, once he got that heart, he would burn them all. Everything. He'd burn it all. They could have fun stitching that filthy doll's ashes back together. Follow them into the Grand Line. The ship began to tear through the water at an unnatural pace. The metal crew rowing faster than the monsters on the Straw Hat crew could ever manage. The Going Merry had begun its trek up Loose Mountain, but this new ship was only a few yards from the entrance as well. "Guys! There's a ship, and it doesn't look friendly," Marcy shouted over the roaring of the water. True to her word, When everyone turned, they saw a ship twice the size of Mary with the same freak from Marcy's home. "He's alive!" Usopp shrieked. "He's going to try to ram us," Nami cried, noticing his ship's speed. "If he even bumps us, we could crash into the wall." "He must be back for Marcy's heart." Zoro tied his bandana firmly around his head. "Guess he didn't learn his lesson last time. No man is worthy of my precious daughter's heart, and certainly not that freak." Sanji took a place near Zoro facing the ship. "No way in hell am I getting my ass kicked again," Marcy shouted, slamming a foot firmly onto the railing. The ship tipped backwards for a moment and Nami snarled another warning. Marcy's left hand clasped her right bicep while her right hand was raised in a fist. Zoro shot her a smirk. "I think that was more than getting your ass kicked. I will destroy you." Nami looped her arms underneath Marcy's pits and across her chest to hold her back from Zoro. Marcy wriggled and flailed. "Destroy Zoro later. We have bigger problems, calm down, Nami." Luffy grinned with a hand on his hat. "I kicked this guy's ass before, so it won't be a problem now." "We weren't on a ship, Kya." The Mary reached the top of Loose Mountain, and on its descent back to the water, everyone went tumbling. The other ship's shadow covered the entire Mary. The Straw Hat crew looked up with wide eyes at the rapidly descending mass of the ship. "We're going to die," Nami and Usopp cried as they hugged each other. "If we all attacked it at once, we'd probably be able to break it into enough pieces to keep it from damaging the Mary. And we'd end up landing in the water below, Marimo." "So, what? You can swim, right, Love Cook?" "That's not the point, it's..." A flash of acid green caught everyone's attention. A teenage girl appeared briefly, hovering just under the ship on a cloud of rippling purple smoke. "Poison shot," the teenager called out. Her body reeled back and her mouth opened wide. A large steaming funnel of putrid green slime-like liquid burst forth from the girl's mouth and splattered across the ship above them. The liquid, upon contact with the ship, began to sizzle and steam. The ship began to dissolve. It was being devoured by the slime. "Did she just vomit on them?" Nami asked, amazed and sickened all at once. "She did." Zoro cringed. Even he found that gross. It looks like the ship's dissolving. Acid or something like it, maybe," Usopp mumbled, unsure. Whatever it was, Sanji was not about to accuse a woman of something so unladylike, but she was obviously very young still, so she really didn't know better, which made it okay to ignore. It may have just saved us a lot of trouble. "That was so cool," Luffy shouted, pumping his fists in the air as he watched the entire ship dissolve to nothing but the upper half and crash down into the water behind them, where it was quickly crushed and devoured by the current. "It was disgusting, not cool," Nami screamed. Marcy stared hard at the girl. The teenager with acid green hair was still hovering above them on her purple cloud, though now, she was looking down her nose at them. A mocking grin on her childish face and a gleam in her eyes that occasionally appeared in Marcy's own. A look that told of knowledge and understanding not meant for someone like them. Pastel green met with poisonous purple and something sparked in the air. A violent tension that mixed and danced with one-sided fear and one-sided joy. Marcy was not feeling joy. "Who are you?" Everyone waited for the girl's answer. "I've never been given an official name, but this body was known as Chelena. My actual body was referred to." The teenage girl floated down low enough to lean in close to Marcy's face. From behind the girl's back she carefully pulled out a single perfectly made doll. It was an exact smaller-scale replica of Marcy. "Is Marcy, but that name's been officially given to you, so call me Big Sis." "Okay." The crew and Marcy tensed, unsure of how to proceed. "What's she talking about, Marcy?" Nami looked at Marcy. "They're Marcy, not this child with a doll." Marcy's face hardened. "Logue Town, right? Bingo, Dolly. Why? Why did I just help you?" Marcy nodded. "Who knows, maybe I just want to make up for the years I wasn't there for my little sister. Maybe I have a grudge against the guy that's after you. Or maybe I just wanted to test out my new body's powers a bit." She shrugged, a malicious grin spreading her face. "Little sister. New body? What's she talking about?" Usopp whispered, looking at the girl, then the doll and back. "Not every doll gets a nice foo for them, some of us have to borrow them." The girl winked at the crew. The realization hit the crew with a cold feeling. That poor child was more than likely dead. They were staring at a doll who wore people-like costumes, and this doll was claiming to be Marcy's sister. A spiked blade flew free from Marcy's wrist and at the girl on the purple cloud. The girl leaned slightly to avoid getting hit. Her tiny hand curled tightly around the twine connecting the blade to Marcy. That wasn't nice. With a firm tug she pulled Marcy off the ship. A flick of her wrist and Marcy was sailing through the air and slamming hard into what looked like a giant mountain. Bye-bye, the girl called, sailing off on her cloud. Zoro moved to attack the girl only to stop when everyone started shouting. They were about to crash into a whale, not a mountain. He sent one single glare after the girl before rushing forward in time to hear the cannon fire. If Marcy could have seen the way their faces change, she probably would have cried, or laughed till her heart burned out. At the moment Marcy's body slid down from its indent in the poor whale, Luffy's special seat broke and Luffy punched the whale in the eye. The poor whale didn't deserve that one. Though Marcy wasn't aware of this all, or she would have gotten rather mad at the caption. She had a rather large soft spot for animals of all kinds. Marcy fell into the ocean beside the ship and was promptly swallowed by the whale. Though she was only aware of twisting waters and a rapid current. Finally everything calmed and Marcy sat at what she thought was the bottom of the sea. It was a green color. It tasted horrible and smelled almost as bad. Her pastel eyes looked around. Destroyed ships, skeletons, and treasure. Marcy stood, her hair floating and swishing around in the water, looking more like a splash of black ink than silk. Carefully she picked her way through the wreckage and piles of treasure. She wandered carefree. This place was rather beautiful. The light filtering through the green water gave everything a shimmering tint. Marcy took long slow strides across the pinkish-colored floor of this ocean. Small shimmering dust-like particles danced around in the green water like small insects playing in a breeze. She smiled, raising a hand to touch one of the glistening particles when she noticed that her satin flesh was breaking apart. Slowly small patches were forming on her body where her flesh was being eaten away and floating away through what she thought was water. She decided it would be best for her to swim to land now, or at least the surface. With a firm jump upwards and hard swift strokes of her arms, she began the lengthy trek to the surface. She was near the surface, when some freak with a crown on crashed into the water and slammed into Marcy. She stared at him and he stared back, before he began flailing his arms and kicking his feet. Marcy took pity on the guy and helped him paddle to the surface. She noticed Zoro dive into the water and grab Luffy along with some lady with blue hair. He gave her a wide-eyed look as he paddled past and she only blinked at him before smiling. And that's when she noticed it. A horrible god-awful burning pain on and in every inch of her body. With a speed that was defiantly causing the freak with the crown pain, Marcy paddled to the surface, breaking through and throwing the man onto the nearest solid object before she launched herself onto it too. It burns. Marcy's first and foremost concern was getting as much of that evil not water stuff out of her body. So she all but tore the ribbon from her chest, allowing her to open her marble rib cage. A flood of reddish-pink gel and greenish liquid poured out onto the deck of the ship. With that done, Marcy calmed down. Sure, her body was now hollow, but at least the burning wasn't as bad. You were in that stuff? Usopp shouted, looking at Marcy, who now had patches where her satin skin had dissolved to its thin bottom layer. Marcy nodded at him. How the hell am I supposed to fix those? He grumbled, realizing he hadn't actually bought anything to use to fix Marcy. Marcy? She hummed at him while wringing out her arms and legs. It looked more like she was giving herself an Indian burn. I'm gonna have to borrow some of the fabric you bought, so I can do repairs on you. She gave him a blank look before sighing. Marcy now wished she had bought the cream-colored satin cloth, but she hadn't. It wasn't the same quality as what her skin was made of, so she didn't want to buy it. Marcy closed her rib cage and began relacing the seam on her front with the ribbon. She froze, feeling two stares of absolute horror on her form. The freak with the crown and the blue-haired woman were staring at her with disgusted horror and amazement. What? They shook their heads and scooted back some. Marcy heard one of them whisper, "Monster." She turned her back to them, a dark cloud hanging around her as she traced random things onto the deck. How cruel. Marcy whispered in a monotone voice, knees pulled to her chest. The whale stopped. Nami ignored Marcy and her cloud of misery. So, who are you? Marcy didn't glance at the cruel weirdos and instead turned to Usopp, who was measuring the damaged areas of her stained flesh. "Whale?" she questioned. Usopp nodded. "Yeah, we're inside a whale's stomach." "Does that mean I was in his tummy juice?" Usopp sighed but nodded. "As long as I'm still alive, I won't let anyone touch this whale," an old man that looked like he was growing some type of fungus from his head shouted. "Huh? What's that supposed to mean?" Luffy questioned. Marcy sighed. "I don't care anymore. Someone will explain at some point, so phase out." The two weirdos began laughing before the crown weirdo spoke. "But we are inside the whale now." They pulled out cannon gun things. "That means we can destroy the stomach and get out of here." They fired the cannon gun things. "You can't stop us anymore." Marcy glared at them, when the old man jumped in front of the cannonballs. She may not have had a single clue about what's going on, nor did she have any idea who was good or bad, but she decided that old fungus guy couldn't be the bad one if he's going to get hurt to save a whale. He used himself as a shield to protect the whale. Usopp shouted, pointing out the obvious. Every group needed someone to do that. It's an important job after all. Marcy began advancing on the two. A glare bending her features. Its level of induced terror was doubled with the patch of satin flesh that'd been eaten through to show a small area of white marble bone. Is he protecting the whale? Marcy decided it should have been obvious to Nami now. Haha, it's worthless. No matter what happens, this whale must be food for our town. Before Marcy could strangle them like she wanted to, Luffy hit them on the heads with a blow that made Nami's punches look pathetic. Marcy wasn't going to say that out loud. "Anyway, let's take care of them first," Luffy said. Several moments later, the crew found themselves sitting on the old fungus guy's island thing talking. Luffy was climbing the tree, while Usopp and Nami mended Marcy's skin. Marcy sobbed as they stitched the patches onto her body. The only fabric sturdy enough to be used for the repairs was a grayish color with a slight purple twinge. There was a small square patch sewn on Marcy's right cheek, another medium-sized patch on her right hand, a small one on her left leg, and a slightly larger one on her back. Marcy came to the conclusion that by the end of this adventure, she was going to look like a trashy rag doll. If she was even in one piece by then. This is an Irish whale from the West Blue. It is the largest species of whale in this world. His name is Laboon, and these people are hooligans. They came from the town close to here. They are thinking of killing Laboon because Laboon's meat can feed them for 2 to 3 years. But I won't let them do that. There is a reason he uses his head to hit the red line and day while I was taking care of the lighthouse, a grow-loose mountain with a little whale. Fungus Man explained Laboon's story and how he's waiting for his dead friends. Marcy immediately understood Laboon's pain. She had waited in some trance for 70 years for her father. She knew the pain of waiting for the dead to return. She watched the water as they sailed through Laboon. She wished she could help him. This poor whale, more than anything, Marcy wanted to help him. She could feel the burning sadness in her body rekindle. Did everyone here simply think of Laboon as a poor creature who had been dealt a bad hand in life? Did they think him a fool for waiting so long and causing himself pain, even though he had been told his friends were gone? Had they thought of her the same? Annoyance bubbled inside her. They didn't have any right to think of her or Laboon as poor or foolish. What did they know? What right did they have? Marcy's fingers bite into the wood railing. A small splinter puncturing into her finger brought her down from her anger. She took 3 deep, completely unnecessary breaths before smiling brightly. She was going to talk to Laboon. Once the 2 weirdos were thrown overboard and everyone gathered around the fungus guy to talk about Laboon, Marcy sat herself directly in front of the whale, as close as she could get. "Laboon, my name's Marcy." She waited a moment. "I was built 101 years ago by a man named Ryuden. I'm a doll he made to replace his dead daughter, still nothing from the whale." Marcy's smile faded away and her eyes glazed over slightly. "He left one day to get something that could make me human and he never came back. I waited for at least 70 years for him to return, but he never did. The stress and pain made me go into a type of trance. I spent every day up until about a week ago thinking my father had left the day before. I don't understand your pain fully, since I'm a doll and I don't handle emotions well and all, but I can relate." A big black eye looked down at her. "We're kinda one and the same, ya know? Well, not really, I guess. Anyway, I waited longer than you and look at how it turned out for me. I'm happy and I've got new friends. If it got better for me, then it will for you too. Bo, Marcy blinked at the whale. I have no idea what that meant, be you? Yeah. Marcy was cut off by Luffy's screaming. Her face morphed into one of pure and utter shock and disbelief when she saw Luffy charging up Laboon with the ship's mast in his arms. She fainted when he stabbed Laboon in the head with it. Marcy laid there with her eyes swirling and body twitching at random. I can't handle this anymore, she whined as Luffy began to battle with the poor whale. We're even now, Luffy shouted. I'm good, right? Marcy could feel her heart burning out by this point. She'd been amazed it hadn't happened sooner. After several, possibly hours, Marcy pulled together enough strength to sit up. She planned to walk to the ship and burn out in front of Usopp, but when she caught sight of the crude Jolly Roger painted on poor Laboon's head, her heart burned out immediately and she crashed back to the ground. Never before had Marcy been so glad to have her world drop into the dark abyss than she did right then. Marcy's eyes snapped open and gazed at the ceiling. She was draped awkwardly on the couch in the girls' room. Apparently, no one had the decency to put her in a more comfortable position. Honestly, Marcy was rarely in this room. She enjoyed the open sky and flowing water too much to spend more time inside the ship than absolutely necessary. Slowly, she peeled herself from the couch, cringing when she caught sight of the grayish patches on her body, before heading outside. She was still in her bright orange bra and boy-cut panties. Once out on the deck, Marcy just stood there. There was snow everywhere and it was freezing cold. Nami began screaming about turning around. Luffy pointed out a dolphin. The waves got stronger, the ship hit an iceberg, leaks started, the wind got too strong, the ship started leaking again, and they were heading in the wrong direction again. Marcy did nothing but stand there the whole time. That was a good nap. Zoro stretched and stood. Even though it's good weather, it's not good to have everyone sleeping. I hope we're not lost. We might be. Nami had to change direction a lot while you were asleep, Marcy shrugged. Shut the hell up. All you did was stand there. That's worse than what he did. Nami grabbed one of the planks left over from repairs and began beating Marcy with it. Why are you using a plank? Marcy screamed as she attempted to run from Nami. My fists don't do enough damage to you, and stop running. No chance in hell. If I stop running you'll just beat me. Obviously, and you're gonna sink the ship. With one super-powered swing, the plank broke in half over Marcy's head. Nami stood angry and huffing, while Marcy lay twitching on the deck. Why isn't she considered one of the monsters? Marcy grumbled. What was that? Nami slammed her foot down on Marcy's back before grinding her heel into satin flesh. Nothing, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. A man with metal tattooed into the flesh side of his face stood on ground near Loose Mountain. The wrecked remains of his ship floating before him along with tarnished parts from his crew. He was pissed to say the least. Of all the stupid outcomes he had thought of and made a countermeasure for, he never once thought that that traitorous bitch would come along and ruin everything. Why his captain adored that ungrateful garbage so much was beyond him. His captain had been so merciful as to give that pathetic doll the power she needed to live, and the first thing that little Brad did was turn around and try to kill him. When that failed, instead of begging for forgiveness like she should have, she had the nerve to turn and run away. At least she was smart enough to know she couldn't win, but she must have gotten stupid over the years. To make such a direct challenge against the captain, he sneered. Maybe this would be enough for his captain to give a kill order on that damn doll. Doubtful. That bitch could ruin all of his plans and he'd still adore the ground she walked on. Fucking pathetic, he spat. Do I sense jealousy? The man drew his short blade and whirled around to face a teenage girl with acid green hair. Don't make me kill you. If the fat bastard heard that said that to me, he'd gut you like a fish. She prowled a circle around him. I'd be careful, Breaker. He snarled at the use of his name. This pathetic doll had no right to use it so casually. What do you want? What do I want? She tapped her chin thoughtfully. I want to watch the fat bastard die. Then go kill him. Breaker sneered as the girl tensed. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You can't, can you, Mar? What a little prick you are, she said in a dangerous voice. You're too much of that man's bitch to do anything properly though. You're quite useless actually. You couldn't even get the heart from my little sister. That's because you interfered. I did, didn't I? She smiled brightly at Breaker. Well, it looks like that fat bastard's control over me isn't as strong anymore. Or maybe he just doesn't care if I kill you. He lunged at her, aiming for the doll in her arms. She spat a stream of the same green liquid she used earlier at him. Everything it touched began to dissolve. That's a new power. Where'd you get it? He watched in fascination as his blade melted. The poison devil fruit. I had this body eat it before I borrowed it. Interesting. How about we test it out? The girl turned away from him, her purple cloud of gas forming again and lifting her into the air. No, I'll let my little sister and her friends kill you. It's below me. She began to drift off in a random direction. That's not it. His grin became maniacal as he shouted after her. You can't, can you? Haha, Captain still got control of you? You can't kill anyone on his crew, can you? His laughter ceased and blood-rolled father was pushed clean through his chest. The wound sizzled at the edges as the flesh and metal began to dissolve from the green slime that her hand was now coated in. You're wrong. She pulled her hand free. Breaker's body fell to the ground and rapidly began to turn to a puddle of dissolved flesh and metal. He stared at her, his eyes slowly glazing over as his life left him. I can kill everyone, but that bastard. That's why I need my little sister to survive. Because eventually, she and her friends will kill off all his pawns and the ones they can't I will. Once that happens, he'll be forced to come for her himself. They'll kill him and then maybe I'll kill them, I'm not sure yet. His eyes faded and she took off on her cloud again, a smile on her face. It's interesting. This heart. The pieces of an ancient soldier. A great weapon. No, a great guardian. I don't fully understand it and the people who do are very tight-lipped. The only constant information they give me is a soul warning. The soldier pieces belong to no one but the soldier itself. This guardian is the only one who had the right to use them. This massive creature forged to protect and serve an innocent race, is the only one who can use these pieces without consequences. They warned me not to try to recreate the soldier. I laughed at them. I'm not creating a soldier. I'm making a child. The oldest of those people stared me in awe. She won't be whole. He whispered. She'll be born broken and you won't be able to fix her. His words hurt me then. They hurt me even more when I realized how true they were. She was broken from the moment her eyes fluttered open. From the moment her stolen heart began to hum such a tragic melody. I can't help but wonder, what have I done? Taken from Ryuden's letters to his deceased wife. Marcy was not stupid. In her first month of existence when the heart was forging her personality, it had given her an intelligence that surpassed a normal being. No, she was not a genius, but she was not stupid. Marcy did not always allow the logical or intelligent portion of her being to be functioning fully at all times, which is what caused her childish and idiotic behavior. The reason she does this is simple. When that specific portion of her being is working to its fullest, the darker emotions that exist in all beings run free and uncontrolled. Marcy is afraid to learn what she could be capable of in such a state. Her strength and skill almost double, but her sense of compassion and morality disappear. It was like disease that would burst from her heart and slither through her body. She remembered a time early in her life when she hadn't bothered to control this horrible darkness. She could remember hacking and slashing away at a man that had attacked her uncle and his child. Her uncle was more than capable of defending himself, but he'd taken a blow to defend his infant child. Marcy didn't even realize she had begun tearing into the man. All she felt was a white-hot rage, a burning desire to see this man's guts scattered across the ground. She had laughed wildly while she tore into him. When she came back to her senses, her father and uncle were standing there, staring at her in terror. Her uncle wouldn't let her near his child for a month. Her father could barely look at her. She had even heard him telling her uncle one night that he was terrified that he had created a monster, not a precious child. Her uncle had agreed that it looked like she was more dangerous than they could handle. It was that night that Marcy had decided that forevermore, she would be a happy loving girl. Something precious and innocent. Marcy decided that from then on, no one would know about the evil within her. To keep this all from happening, Marcy began using an abundance of happiness and love as a form of antidote to the more poisonous emotions. Case in point, Marcy is not stupid. So when she opened her eyes to stare directly into a cold wooden floor with no recollection of ever leaving the Mary or her heart burning out, she knew something was wrong. Something had knocked her out, she decided, and that was rather hard to do without removing her heart. Marcy began her internal check, hunting for a single clue as to what could have downed her and wiped her memories of the last few hours at the least. The only things she found were a small burnt patch of satin flesh on the side of her neck and a few faint waves of electricity coursing through her system. A burn was far from enough to take her down, so maybe she obtained the burn when she fell to the ground. The electrical waves could simply be from the air. A lightning storm passing over them would be enough for her body to gather a moderate charge of its own. Marcy wasn't positive if she should get up and investigate or stay face first on the floor until something provoked her to move. If whoever downed her was still hanging around, she didn't want to meet them until she knew how they put her in this state. The faces of her friends flashed in her mind's eye and she decided it wouldn't hurt to take a peek around this room. With a soft, unnecessary exhale to focus her, Marcy slid her eyes closed again. Her glass eyes began their rapid rotations in their sockets. The satin flesh and marble bone that made her skull faded from her vision and the room came into view, playing before her eyes slightly blurred and jerky. There were 4 other people in the room at the moment. Sanji, Usopp, Luffy, and Nami. Or more precisely, Nami's feet and shins. Marcy attempted to adjust her vision, thinking that something may have been obscuring her sight. The image remained the same. The only explanation for Nami's lack of a body was that Marcy had developed a blind spot. She noted with a whine and a pout that it was more than likely because of the cracks in her eye. Maybe it would be for the best if she did get it replaced. A hand gently touched at her shoulder. "Marcy?" The hand gave a slight shake. The voice was a gentle whisper laced with worry. "Marcy? Are you okay?" Carefully, Marcy rolled herself over and blinked up at a frowning Nami. "Why is Luffy so fat?" Worry was replaced with annoyance. "After waking up on the floor, the first thing you ask is that?" "Really?" Marcy nodded. Nami sighed. "He pigged out like usual then passed out." Nami helped Marcy to her feet. "Now help me steal these bounty hunters' treasure." Marcy blinked again. "What? Have I always been taller than you?" Marcy blinked for the 3rd time. She couldn't remember if it was normal for her eyes to be level with Nami's forehead. "Of course you have. You're a doll, how could you grow taller? Now go take care of the bounty hunters," Nami growled. "Bounty hunters?" Nami looked at Marcy oddly. "Yeah, you don't remember?" "Nope. Last thing I remember was just a bit after Papa Sanji made breakfast." Nami twitched, more than likely in disgust, when Marcy referred to Sanji as Papa. Everyone, but Luffy and Sanji, found it odd and creepy. "I thought you were only faking it when you hit the ground, but you really blacked out, didn't you?" "Yeah. And it seems like whatever they did wiped my memory of the last few hours." Nami hummed in thought for a moment. "Maybe electrical currents react badly with your heart? Why would electricity have anything to do with anything? One of the bounty hunters put a rod against your neck and it emitted a massive shock, then you hit the ground. You were kind of steaming too." "Oh okay. And you just watched while they did that? I thought you were acting. How was I supposed to know it would actually affect you?" You're mean." Nami threw a grin at Marcy before pulling her out of the room and into another. Marcy offered Nami no help in her treasure hunt. Instead, Marcy peeked outside by use of some newly made bullet holes. The sight her pastel eyes beheld sent her hips and body wiggling in a very Sanji-like manner. A large grin pulled her face while a small, ee type of squeal escaped her throat. Nami turned to stare at her, slightly afraid. Was Marcy channeling Sanji? "Marcy, what are you doing?" Marcy turned to Nami, sparkles in her visible green eye. "Zoro's so cool," the doll squealed, still doing the odd wiggle dance. Marcy is no longer allowed to spend time with Sanji, Nami decided. The world did not need a spastic female version of Sanji. Any male Marcy went after would either run from her. Marcy often forgot how much she weighed or how strong she was and tended to cause accidental damage to people while she was being affectionate. Luffy was the only person who remained unaffected by her sudden physical affections. He seemed to even rather enjoy her sudden bone-crushing hugs. Or they would run from an angry blonde cook with a case of overprotective father syndrome. "I wonder if he'll teach me," Nami blinked only to say. Marcy had in each of her hands her long needle-like blades and one in her mouth. Nami didn't know where she had gotten the third one from and she wasn't going to ask. The doll had grabbed a random piece of fabric and tied it around her head like a bandana in the same way Zoro does. Marcy also appeared to be trying to imitate Zoro's stance and facial expression. The stance was terrible, exceptionally so if Nami could tell that it was bad. Nami cringed. She had seen a few small fighting moves from Marcy and her style was better described as an aggressive dance, rough and filled with a forcefulness that didn't translate properly into sword play. The expression Marcy had decided upon could be considered somewhat like Zoro's, though his made him look like a demon while Marcy's made her look possessed. It was not a pretty face. Nami's expression fell even further when Marcy began a pitiful attempt at performing some of Zoro's moves. The doll with a serious case of hero worship. Nami refused to call it anything else, only stopped her poor portrayal of Zoro's fighting skills when she accidentally stabbed herself in the leg. Nami isn't even positive how the poor girl managed that one. There's nothing really worth stealing here, so we might as well go check on Zoro. Marcy nodded happily, tucking two of her blades back into her arms before literally swallowing the blade she had grasped between her teeth. Nami spun around and began to walk away. She was beyond being bothered by any of the doll's weird and nasty abilities or actions. The sight that greeted Marcy when she finally joined Nami outside made her pastel green eyes blink before painted pink lips spread into a grin. Luffy lay off to the side, still asleep with his fat belly jiggling in time with his snores. A sweaty, bloody, and lightly beaten Zoro stood, looking moderately disturbed as a rather tall man with exceptionally large hair clung to his ankle and shouted about Zoro protecting a princess. "If you can take the princess to the great country of Alabasta, we will repay you with a great prize." Zoro grumbled out some form of a threat while Nami suddenly became very interested in their conversation. "A great prize? Is that really true?" Nami grinned with one eye closed while everyone stared at her. Marcy decided that this was her only chance to sneak away before Nami revealed her diabolical plan of pure greediness. Unfortunately for Marcy, she weighed 250 pounds and she forgot there was an open barrel behind her. The back of her legs hit the edge and Marcy tilted backwards. Her satin hands grasped the edge of the barrel to support her body while her bottom dipped into the barrel an inch or so. Her feet and legs went up at an angle. Everyone ignored her and the barrel that was bending and creaking under Marcy's weight. "That's very interesting. How about 1 billion berry?" The barrel gave way under Marcy and she flopped to the ground, tangled in her own long limbs. "Didn't you get drunk and fall asleep? You think that I can sleep peacefully in a town that welcomes pirates?" Nami moved closer to Zoro, regarding Marcy with a single glance and shake of the head. "I pretended the whole time. Am I good or what?" "Oh, is that so?" Zoro's attention turned to the doll who was now in front of him giving him a weird grin and a sparkly look. "Were you pretending to? You mean you saw me go down?" Marcy's face fell. "Yeah." At the apathetic look on the doll's face, Zoro stuttered out another sentence. "I figured you were all right. After all, it was just a little shock." "Of course. Just a little shock." The apathetic look stayed as Marcy turned and walked away, kicking at the ground. "So little that it knocked me out and wiped my memories from the last few hours. Glad y'all were worried." "You were really knocked out?" Marcy threw him a blank look. "That's weird. Shouldn't that slime stuff inside you have stopped the electricity or something?" "It's gel, not slime, and it decreases impacts only. Also, I have a metal heart and metal pieces scattered throughout my body, dimwit." "How was I supposed to know that?" Zoro shouted back at the doll. "If you paid more attention to my body then you'd know," Zoro cringed back, a slight blush pulling across his nose and cheeks. Marcy was unaffected by her own words. "I mean seriously, there are detailed pictures in the galley. And if those don't help you, just tell me and I'll show you everything. Geez. Watch what you say. You're too young to talk like that." "Huh? What do you mean? Did I say something bad?" Marcy paused to think. She couldn't find anything wrong with what she said. "Wait, what do you mean too young? I'm at least 4 times your age." "That's not the point. Both of you be quiet." Nami slammed her fists into both of their heads. A lump formed on Zoro's head and Marcy stuck her tongue out at him since she was left with no mark. Zoro drew a single sword and swiped it at her. Marcy squealed and rolled to the side. Anyway, back to business. So, are you willing to pay me 1 billion berry, Mr. Royal Guard? If we don't help you, your princess will die for sure. Zoro swiped at Marcy again only to get his foot stomped on. He cringed, feeling his toes crunch beneath Marcy's dainty satin foot. How can a soldier like me find that amount of money? While Zoro was distracted by his now pounding and possibly broken toes, Marcy leapt behind him and launched herself at his back. Huh? So, your princess is worthless compared to money? Marcy slammed into his back and latched on tightly. Zoro let out a grunt and a gacking sound as he stumbled forward, his face nearly greeting the ground. Just pay. If you can help the princess, you can deal with her directly. I'm sure that she will agree. Zoro began his attempt to remove the doll from his back only to earn a giggle and her legs tightening around his waist. You mean that we have to help the princess first? Zoro grabbed hold of Marcy's foot and bent it at an odd angle in an attempt to remove her leg from around his body. During our negotiation, the princess is. Marcy let out a squeal of pain before retaliating by biting down into Zoro's shoulder. Okay, I'll help the princess first. Zoro let out a shout before pulling on her body more. Well, go. Zoro and Marcy both looked at Nami in confusion for a moment. Marcy released Zoro's shoulder from her mouth before Zoro started shouting. If you want to do that, why don't you go by yourself? How come I have to help you get money? Besides, I have this ancient rag doll to deal with. Marcy hissed, ancient? Before slipping 2 fingers into the corner of his mouth and pulling. Are you crazy? If it's about money, it sure is about me. But if it's about the promise, everyone must be involved too. You are really selfish. Zoro ripped Marcy's hand away from his face, only to have the other reach out and grab hold of his earrings. He turned his head and attempted to bite her fingers. What? I just asked you to hurt someone. Is that a problem? On Zoro's next attempt to bite her fingers, Marcy grabbed his nose. I hate to be used by people. Zoro's free hand reached for her face, only to be bitten multiple times. His hand then caught hold of her hair and pulled. In response, Marcy began jerking his head around by his nose. Are you afraid that you're gonna lose to them? Zoro pulled her hair harder and Marcy released his nose in favor of poking him in the eye and biting his shoulder again. What? Say that again. Are you afraid you're gonna lose to them? Marcy halted her attack and propped her chin on the shoulder she had moments ago been gnawing on. Her hand ceased its assault on his face in order to hang limply over his other shoulder. Zoro released her hair, but kept tight hold of her hand in case she decided to assault him some more. I meant that you should change your words, not repeat them. Marcy yawned and grumbled before nuzzling into the crook of Zoro's neck. He froze, ready to be chewed on again. Did you forget? You still owe me. Zoro felt a down his spine as he heard Marcy sniff him. When was that? Stop making up stories. Marcy sniffed him again. What the hell are you doing anyway? Marcy lifted her face from his neck and knocked their foreheads together. Nothing. Why? She had an apathetic expression and monotone voice. It's creepy. Good. Marcy grinned wildly before rubbing her cheek against his. Zoro didn't understand what was going on, but he wasn't okay with it. I lent you 100,000 berry at Log Town, so you could buy your swords. Nami wasn't even going to acknowledge whatever kind of moment those two were having. Nami decided that it was very well possible that the electrical shock Marcy had received screwed with her personality slightly. Since Marcy's entire existence was due to that heart, it was possible that any damage to the heart would have a lasting effect on Marcy herself. She would have to get Usopp to check Marcy over after all of this. But I've already given that back to you because I got my swords for free. Zoro attempted to push Marcy away from him. But you also promised me that you would pay me 3 times interest, right? You still owe me 200,000 berry. Marcy released Zoro and went in hunt of something more interesting to do. Had she heard Zoro's sigh of relief, she would have reattached herself to his back and continued her assault on the poor swordsman. Marcy tuned out Zoro and Nami's continued discussion in favor of humming a blissful tune and making her way to the giant cactuses. Marcy's trek stopped when she heard voices and caught sight of the badly burnt body of a very muscular woman. Her eyes then found 3 other people. A man picking his nose. A woman who reminded Marcy of a citrus fruit. And one of the mean weirdos that they helped earlier, except she was riding a duck. You can't get away from me. Booger bullet. Marcy gagged as he flicked his booger at the girl on the duck. Zoro, like a ninja in the night, appeared in front of the girl on the duck and cut the booger in half. The two halves exploded and Marcy flinched, disgusted and concerned. Boogies should not go boom. Mr. Bushido. The lady on the duck screamed. Who is that guy? The booger flicker asked. I had to cut a booger. Marcy laughed at him. And why are you just standing there laughing at me? I refuse to go anywhere near a booger. Why do you have to show up in a situation like this? The lady on the duck shouted as she twirled a circular blade on string around. Zoro blocked it with his sword. Calm down. I've come here to help you. Nami finally badgered you into it, huh? Shut up. You're helping too. Marcy held her arms up in an X shape. Request denied. Zoro growled at her before returning his attention to the other man. So, you're the swordsman who destroyed this town. Why does he have to protect the Princess of Alabasta? The citrus lady asked. I have my own reasons. Zoro responded before snapping at Marcy when she mumbled something along the lines of, more like Nami's reasons. Never mind. You still can't compare to us. Just another worthless obstacle. Marcy frowned. She didn't appreciate the way that man was talking. That's right. So, this obstacle. Citrus lady pulled her hat from her head and grinned. Shall be crushed to the ground by my power. Marcy hoped her power wasn't anything like her partner's power. Suddenly Marcy's attention was gained by a still very fat and incredibly angry Luffy. Zoro. Luffy. If you've come to help me, that's not necessary. Or did you owe that girl, too? I won't forgive you this time. Let's fight. Marcy blinked confused. Did something happen? She couldn't remember the last few hours, so it was very possible. What the hell are you talking about? I don't understand at all. Shut up. I will crush the ungrateful like you to the ground. Marcy, who was just as confused as Zoro, gave up on trying to understand and moved to stand beside the girl and her duck. Hello. You're very adorable. Marcy grinned a face-splitting smile. My name's Marcy. What's yours? The girl and duck stared at her confused. Thank you. My name's Vivi. Marcy's face deadpanned for a moment. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the duck. Vivi became nervous and confused. His name is Karu. Marcy grinned again and began petting the duck, who started sweating profusely. Vivi knew Karu was afraid, and honestly she was a little bit too. The girl wasn't human. Vivi had seen that for herself when she walked into the galley on their ship and saw the long-nosed man and the navigator tucking a metal heart into the girl's chest before latching her ribs shut and lacing her skin back together. Vivi had come to the conclusion that Marcy was a devil fruit user. Vivi's attention was drawn back to the fighting Straw Hat and the swordsman. Aren't you going to stop them or something? She asked Marcy. Pastel green eyes looked from Karu to the fight and she shrugged. Nah. She waved her hand at the two fighting. They'll sort things out. Really? Vivi felt sweat run down her face before her attention turned to Mr. 5 and Ms. Valentine. Mr. 5. It seems that he didn't come to stop us. That may be right, Ms. Valentine. Anyway, we'd better take care of our business as soon as possible. Let's go, Ms. Valentine. Yes, Mr. 5. Vivi wasn't sure what to think when the two were thrown through a building with the bloated Luffy. Marcy just shrugged and went back to cooing at Karu. The building collapsed and outshot Ms. Valentine. Vivi and the duck looked frightened again. I am really angry now. You all must die by my special ability from the kilo fruit. Be prepared. Right now. My weight is only 1 kilogram, so I can jump very high. Besides. Marcy wondered if it was common for people to make long-winded explanations of their abilities during a fight. She also wondered why no one ever attacked during those speeches. It was a great opportunity. Mr. Bushido, get out of there, that woman will. Shut up. Marcy wondered if Vivi had something against Zoro's name. This is not the time to worry about that. Luffy emerged from the destroyed building, holding a badly beaten Mr. 5. Ha! That exercise made all of my food digest again. Mr. 5. You must be kidding. He's an officer agent of Baroque Works. Marcy looked at the startled Vivi. He flicks explosive boogers. He couldn't have been that tough. You don't know anything about Baroque Works, do you? Nope. Marcy turned her attention back to Luffy and Zoro. And it doesn't matter anyway cause Luffy and Zoro can beat the poop out of anyone. Are you sure? Why would I say something I didn't believe? Zoro and Luffy sent each other flying into opposite buildings. Sparkles appeared in Marcy's eye and she wiggled a little bit. They're so cool. Vivi gawked at her. Aren't they supposed to be friends? Marcy nodded. Then why are they trying to kill each other and why are you just standing there acting like a fangirl? They'll yell at me if I interfere. What am I going to do? If I can get through this, I'll be safe. As soon as Vivi started forward on Karu, Luffy and Zoro charged each other. Poor girl and her duck nearly had a heart attack. Mr. Five and Ms. Valentine rushed forward only to have two very pissed off pirates round on them. Both of you shut up, don't you dare get involved. Mr. Five made a face that reminded Marcy of Usopp while Ms. Valentine sobbed. Marcy giggled. The two Baroque Works agents were then taken down. Marcy turned to Vivi. See, aren't they cool? More like scary. Cool, scary, what's the difference? A lot. Though, I never thought I'd meet these kind of people at the entrance of the Grand Line. As Luffy and Zoro began their battle again, Nami the Mighty slammed her fists into their faces. Stop being stupid, you two. Marcy wondered briefly, that if only blades and sharp objects could actually hurt Luffy, then why did he always end up with a bump when Nami slugged him? Was Nami that strong? As long as you protect that you'll be fine. And now Nami was shaking the two by their shirts. I was so close to losing 1 billion berry, did you realize that? What are you talking about? And why are you helping me? Zoro and Luffy began clawing at each other. Marcy found that to be funny. At least Marcy stayed focused. I was playing with the duck. Why am I not surprised? Nami turned to Vivi with a small smile. We have to talk. How about some negotiations? Negotiations? Nami once again slammed her fists into the boys' heads. Stop fighting. Karu looked horrified. She's a demon. Be careful. Nami flashed sharp teeth at Marcy who squealed and hid behind the shivering wide-eyed duck. Why didn't you tell me first? Luffy laughed after the explanation of why Zoro kicked everyone's collective ass. I thought that you were mad because they didn't have your favorite food. Don't compare me with you. Marcy sat there grumbling. I still can't believe Zoro and Nami saw me go down and didn't do anything to help me. Some friends. You were knocked out too? Luffy asked looking confused. Marcy nodded at him. But I thought you didn't sleep? Weren't you paying attention to their explanation of what happened? Not really. Marcy turned her back to them. A cloud of misery rolling around her body as she once again began tracing shapes on the ground. Nami and Vivi continued their negotiations. That's impossible. Anyway, thank you for saving my life. Marcy scooted closer to Karu, who shot her a nervous look. Why, aren't you a princess? It's just 1 billion berry. Marcy reached out to pet Karu and he fled. Her cloud of misery expanded. Do you know of Alabasta? No, I've never heard of that before. It used to be the most peaceful and civilized nation on the Grand Line. Used to? During these past 3 years, there was a civil war. The citizens started to create turmoil and disturb the nation. Until one day, I heard about an organization called Baroque Works. I learned that our citizens were persuaded by this organization. Besides that, I don't know anything. So, we can't do anything about them. I asked Igaram, the person who always took care of me, to help me. With a rumor, we can't do anything. We decided to join Baroque Works to dig up some secrets. So that we could learn the real identity of their leader and his purpose. You're a brave princess. Marcy nodded in agreement with Zoro's statement. The main purpose of Baroque Works is to build a dream country. Right? Wait a minute, isn't this? Yes. Boss used the words dream country to control everyone. But the actual goal of Baroque Works is to conquer Alabasta. I have to hurry up and warn everyone. If I can't stop everyone, we will fall for Baroque Works' plan. That's right, a nation in turmoil wouldn't have that much money, right? Nami sighed. So, who is the boss? The boss? You're better not knowing that. Vivi waved her hand frantically at Luffy. That's the only thing I can't tell you because it can cost you your life. Ha ha ha. It's good that you're not telling us because someone who wants to conquer a nation would be the worst man ever, right? That's right. No matter how good you are, you can't compare to Crocodile, one of the 7 pirate warlords. Marcy looked up startled. Didn't you just say his name? Zoro grumbled. How do you guys make faces like that? Marcy whispered, amazed. She could care less about some animal trying to rule a nation. Actually, a part of her thought that it would pretty cool to see a crocodile rule a country. She was more interested in the amazing and scary faces these people kept making. I can understand Luffy making them cause he's all stretchy, but you guys? In time with everyone else. Marcy's attention was turned to an otter and a vulture. No one said anything and no one moved. What's with that vulture and otter? Didn't they go to report to your boss that we know his secret? Tell me. Nami shook the sobbing Vivi. Marcy leaned over to Luffy. They were so cute. She grinned wildly. We should get some animals on our crew next. Luffy nodded in agreement. I'm really sorry. I didn't intend to tell you, Vivi sobbed. That's all you can say. Nami made another scary face with sharp teeth. We just got to the Grand Line, and already one of the 7 pirate warlords wants us dead. I never thought we would meet them this early. We're so lucky, Zoro said, looking not in the least bit upset over it all. I wonder what kind of person he is, Luffy questioned. Huh? He's a person? I thought he was a crocodile? Zoro shook his head at Marcy. His name is Crocodile. Marcy oohed and grinned. That wasn't as cool as a crocodile taking over a nation. Shut up. Nami turned and began to walk away. Thank you for everything, even though it was just a short period of time. Hey, where are you going, Nami? He still doesn't know my face, so I'd better escape now. And because the world on occasion seems to hate Nami, the otter and vulture appeared. The otter held up perfectly drawn portraits of each of them. Nami clapped. Wow, you're good. She then rounded on her 4 companions. This means that I can't run away now. We definitely need an animal that can do something cool now, Marcy said to Luffy. That otter is very interesting. He grinned back at Marcy. We should get one that can sing. Marcy nodded enthusiastically. So, this means that we're in Baroque Works' blacklist now, Zoro smirked. That's so exciting. Nami, that's my cloud of misery. Marcy stomped her foot and pouted at Nami, who sat near the wall with her knees to her chest. A dark cloud hung over her while Vivi tried to comfort her. I'm borrowing it. Marcy stuck her tongue out at Nami. Don't worry everyone. Marcy twitched and dove behind Zoro. I have a plan. Zoro looked away from the cross-dressed Igaram and to the shivering Marcy. What are you doing? Marcy looked at him with scared wide eyes. Okama. She whispered. What about him? Sanji told me that Okama are evil and they'll taint my innocence. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound good. Zoro sighed. He was going to have a talk with the love cook about not filling the doll's mind with lies. Let me tell you something, because Crocodile is one of the 7 warlords, the government doesn't want him. But when he was a pirate his bounty was 80 million berry. So how about the of taking the princess to Alabasta? Marcy remained behind Zoro. 80 million berry. That's 4 times higher than Arlong. Just deny it. No one listened to Nami. What are you talking about? Luffy questioned. He wants us to take that girl home. Oh, really? Sure, why not? Princess, please give me the eternal pose. Igaram said to Vivi. Marcy hissed at him when he came closer to the group. Zoro flicked her on the nose to silence her. What's an eternal pose? Nami questioned with tears still running down her face. You don't know of it? Her head shook in the negative. It's permanently set to a single island. The regular log pose will guide you from one island to another, right? This kind of log pose, once it has memorized the frequency, it will record that forever. No matter where you are, it will guide you to that island only. This log pose has been set to Alabasta. He turned directly to Vivi now. Listen to me, Princess Vivi. I will disguise myself as you and take these dummies with me to Alabasta. While Baroque Works is chasing me, please go with these people to Alabasta by using the regular route. I've never used that route, but I think you should pass 2 or 3 islands before you reach Alabasta. If you are safe, I hope to see you at our country. Igaram bid his farewells and boarded the ship. Marcy stared after him, finally coming from behind Zoro and waving a slight goodbye to the man. He's gone. He's still cool until the last minute. Marcy wondered what was so cool about dressing like a woman. He is the only person that I can rely on. Marcy looked out to admire the beautiful night sky, just moments before an explosion rocked the night. Luffy shouted in rage and Zoro began to bark out orders. Marcy stared at the cloud of smoke before turning to look at Vivi. She grabbed her bridle style and took off running for the Mary. Nami followed directly behind her. Luffy broke off to grab Sanji and Usopp. Once they reached the ship, Vivi kicked up a fuss and wiggled her way out of Marcy's arms. "Where's Karu?" Vivi questioned, looking around. Marcy tensed, remembering the moment when he fled from her for trying to pet him. "We had to go look for him. But we don't have any time to look for him now, but I can't leave him here." "Hey, what's wrong?" Zoro asked from the deck of Mary. "Karu disappeared, so she has to whistle and find him." "Are you talking about this duck?" Karu waved at them and Marcy waved back. "He was here before me." With that done, everyone boarded the Mary and they were off. "Do you know how many people will follow us?" Luffy asked Vivi. "I'm not sure, but there are about 2,000 people working for Baroque Works, and there are many towns similar to Whiskey Peak. I think maybe about 1,000. Because we know who the boss is, and that's a very big deal." Sanji and Usopp woke a few hours later and began to fuss about leaving. Instead of an explanation, they got a fist to the skull courtesy of Nami. "Hey, this ship is good." Everyone whirled around to stare at the woman in a cowboy hat who appeared. "I just met Mr. 8 over there, Ms. Wednesday." "Did you kill Igaram? Who allowed you to get on our ship?" Marcy tensed while Luffy yelled. She didn't like this lady. "Why are you here, Ms. All Sunday? Who is she and where is her partner?" Nami questioned. "She's the boss's partner, and the one who knows the boss. I followed her to find out his true identity." "Actually, I just let you follow me. So, she's a good person?" Even Marcy knew she wasn't good. "I knew that. You're also the person who told boss about me too, right?" "What? So, she is a bad person. What do you want from me?" "Because I feel that you worked really hard, I decided to help you. However, helping the princess who wants to help her nation and deciding to become Baroque Works' enemy is a very stupid thing to do. Stop insulting me." Sanji and Usopp appeared on either side of Ms. All Sunday. Sanji with a gun in hand and Usopp wielding his slingshot. Zoro had a sword drawn. Nami had her staff out. A spiked blade slid free from Marcy's wrist. "Hey, you're doing this because you know what you're supposed to do, right?" Usopp questioned Sanji. "No, but it seems that this girl is dangerous to my beloved Ms. Wednesday, so I can't let her live." "But those things are dangerous." Suddenly the two were thrown over the railing. "Don't point them at me." "Wow. Actually, she is really beautiful." Marcy placed a foot between Sanji's shoulder blades and pushed him back down. "Flirt later, Papa Sanji." Sanji grumbled and looked up at Marcy. He blinked. He'd never seen his precious daughter's face so serious before. "Calm down. I haven't received any orders yet, so there is no reason to fight you now. So you're the captain, Monkey D. Luffy, right?" Luffy's hat left his head and landed in her hand. "Give me back my hat. Do you want to fight?" Usopp shouted along with Luffy, except he was behind the mast. Everyone ignored him. "You are so unlucky to help the princess, who is the enemy of Baroque Works, and you too, princess. You only have a few pirates to take care of you." She placed Luffy's hat on top of her own. "But worst of all is the direction that you are heading in. Your next destination is Little Garden. We don't have to do anything over there and you might not make it to Alabasta. You all will disappear from this world before you see Crocodile's face. Do you think we care what you have to say? Give me back my hat." Usopp continued to shout from behind the mast. Still no one really noticed. "Stop barking. Anyone can boast." Luffy's hat landed on his head as she tossed something to Vivi. "You're going to face many obstacles, but you're still going to go there. You're really crazy." "An eternal pose?" Vivi questioned. "If you have that, you can avoid those obstacles and go straight to Alabasta. Our boss doesn't even know the way to get there, so we can't follow you." "So, she is a good person?" "I doubt it, Nami." Nami blinked at the serious look on Marcy's face. The expression alone made her look much older, far from her usual teenage appearance. "Why are you doing this?" Vivi demanded. "I think it's trap." "I'll let you decide if it's a trap or not." Luffy snatched the eternal pose from Vivi. "Don't worry about that." He then crushed it in his hand. Nami kicked him in the face and started screaming. "You don't have a right to decide our route." "Really, that's a pity. I don't mind a person with a great spirit like you. If you're lucky we shall meet again. She stood from the railing. Her aqua eyes locked with Marcy's pastel green one. And if I'm lucky, I'll get a peek at that heart of yours. The relic of life from the ancient soldier. The soldier's heart. I wonder what secrets its text holds. Before Marcy could respond, she jumped from the Mary and onto the back of a giant turtle.